Hello, this is Don Davis. This is the second part on doing lit reviews for the GSU Happy Lab. So this is an example paper of a qualitative lit review, and I'm going to walk you through the organization. This is really a two-step process. So in the first step, Josh, the first author here, did a qualitative systematic lit review, and so it had a very structured organization where he it was organized very similar to the meta-analysis that we just looked at, and then in the section that very explicitly described his search. They ended up needing to modify that because this journal wasn't really interested in publishing a qualitative lit review as such. So you'll see what they did is they reorganized it more as a theoretical paper, but the tables are very much summarizing information from a typical qualitative lit review. So the beginning of the paper lays out some of the rationale for looking at collectivism and forgiveness. Starts from broad, kind of goes to narrow, understanding forgiveness. So there's a section on different theoretical perspectives on forgiveness and some of the limitations of our understanding as it relates to cross-cultural work. And then they start moving towards the topic of individualism, collectivism, which is the main cultural distinction that Josh was wanting to look at in his master's thesis. And so then basically Josh reviews some theory on collectivism and forgiveness, talks about a theoretical distinction between emotional and decisional forgiveness, and also gives a definition here of collectivistic forgiveness. And then what he's really doing is setting up two main propositions of the paper that are going to organize the rest of the paper. So what we see here is he ended up using a thematic organization where other than this intro, which kind of funnels to these two propositions, the paper is organized based on evidence in support of these two propositions that he lays out. So he's got a nice little figure that summarizes everything that's in the paper here. He's got a table with his two propositions. So collectivistic forgiveness occurs within a broad context of social harmony, reconciliation, and relational pair. Collectivistic forgiveness focuses more on making a decision to forgive, motivated by social harmony, than on the intrapersonal experience of emotional forgiveness, which is typically prioritized in more individualistic countries like the U.S. So then he's got proposition one, a whole section on that, where he reviews a variety of studies that specifically looked at constructs related to that proposition. And we'll talk more about this at later times, but when you review a study, one of the challenges is deciding at what level of precision to go into the study. So sometimes you may just really focus on the sample, so Japanese, American. So it's very difficult to really understand what someone did if you don't even know who was in the sample, whether it's undergraduate, it's community sample, clinical population. Often people, if they're going to make a point related to measurement, they may specifically describe the type of measures that were used, or they may focus on certain details of the procedure that were used in the study, especially if they want to contrast procedures in one study versus another, and they're thinking that method issue may be related to differences in the results. So anyway, one challenge is to decide what level of depth to go into. But as we see here in Josh's paper, okay, this is his table that organizes all the studies that fall under this particular portion of the paper. So it was easy for him to do this because he had done a big table in his lit review and for his thesis, and so when it came time to tweak his paper, he already had all this set up. And a lot of times you can use a table to cover major details of studies so that when you're going through the narrative, you don't have to cover as much ground, because to be honest, unless it's directly related to the point you're making, sometimes it's burdensome to the reader to have to sort through a lot of method stuff. So anyway, he's reviewing different studies that kind of fall under his theoretical organization here. And these fit the organization he provided in Figure 1. And then we come to Proposition 2. So this is his second major point, and he's going to review evidence that relates to this proposition. And as you can see, once again, he uses a table to summarize most of the major results. This time it's organized a little bit differently, so he's got the personality construct here on the left, effect size information over here. So a lot of times you want to just use convention. So if you can find a good template to work from, so a very similar paper, then you can a lot of times make decisions about how to organize your table based on prior examples. Because the biggest rule of thumb in writing, when you're doing psychology writing, which is a scientific form of writing, is you really want the readers to have easy access to information. You don't want them to have to work too hard. So a lot of times there are pretty established norms for kind of what you report and how you report it. So that's the main part of the review. And then the last portion of the paper is where he kind of pulls things back together and relates it to the broader literature. So if the introduction kind of funneled things down to the point of the paper, the discussion kind of starts with the main purpose of the paper and kind of gives a summary of the rationale for the paper, and then relates the findings to the broader literature. And typically there's a section on limitations, or so here we are, and then future research. Bam. So as you can see, you want to be creative in your ideas, but not creative in your organization. So ideally, things are organized in a way where people can find quickly what you're looking for. TCP, counseling psychologist, always tends to have a section on clinical practice. So the last section of his paper, he wrote some implications of this model for practice.